Hi, and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's book-to-show comparison for the Expanse Season 1, Episode 8, Salvage. This video is part of a series of videos where I can compare the Expanse TV show to that of its source material, pointing out the differences and giving my opinion on whether or not I feel these changes worked. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for the Expanse up to the end of Season 2. However, if you have not read the novels yet, not to worry, no events that take place after Season 2 will be spoiled in this video, provided that you have seen up to the end of Season 2. So we start the episode with Miller on a transport going out into space where he talks to a fellow passenger who happens to be a Mormon preparing to go on a trip on the Nauvoo out into the great unknown, and Miller asks him, doesn't this make him terrified? Now, there's not much to say about the scene in terms of changes, as it's remarkably similar to the scene from the books. In fact, I was surprised to see this here, as from memory I thought they transplanted the scene to Season 2, but I guess I was wrong. It does in fact take place at the same time as it does in the novels, which is a bit surprising as it sets up Miller wanting to use the Nauvoo to destroy Eros, which is a Season 2 storyline. So that is interesting. Anyway, I'll give this a 0. So then we cut to the Rocinante arriving at their destination, which is the asteroid where Fred lost contact with Lionel Polanski, and they find the stealth ship that captured Julie and destroyed the Canterbury and then was taken over by the proto-molecule. Now, as I mentioned in the previous episode, in the novels, the Rocinante goes directly from Tycho Station to Eros. They don't pick up a corporate spy hitchhiker. They don't run into Martian patrols. And at the end of one chapter, they're on Tycho, and at the start of the next chapter, they're on Eros. So in the novels, Fred gets communication from Polanski on Eros and sends Holden directly there. And after they discover Julie Mal there, they search her journal that indicates where they can find the stealth ship, so then they go to the stealth ship. So this changes things quite a bit. For one, the corporate spy who doesn't exist in the novels isn't there, and instead Miller is. And for two, they had already encountered the proto-molecule on Eros, so they knew exactly what they were looking for. But given the structure of the show, I can see why they changed this order up a bit, as they wanted to end the season with the outbreak on Eros as the big finale, so to show them going to the asteroid afterward would be a bit anticlimactic, or they could have held off on the asteroid until Season 2, but then it would seem like they're kind of dealing with old news. But because of this change, they don't really find as much about Protogen and the protomolecule in the show as they did in the books, at least not from the stealth ship. So it's almost the same, but I do kind of feel like the book's order of doing things is slightly better, if I'm being honest, so I'll give this a -1. So then we cut over to Tycho Station, where we see Fred Johnson working with one of his people to try to crack the code of the data clip that he stole off of the dead Martian Lopez. Now in the novels, as I mentioned before, he didn't steal a chip, Holden gave it to him, and also Fred was being all sneaky about it. He actually told Holden about it and asked Naomi to help him decipher the data. So a bit less clandestine, which I kind of like, but then again, I can't begrudge the show for adding a little tension in, so I'll give this a 0. So next we go back to the Rocinante, where Holden brings the corporate spy onto the bridge to ask for his opinion on the stealth ship, but he doesn't know any more than they do. He then accuses them of being on a salvage mission for Fred Johnson, but Holden makes it very clear that they aren't on the salvage mission, that they're looking for survivors. He then forces the spy to go on the ship with them and threatens him by assigning Amos as his bodyguard, which was actually an empty threat because he then threatens Amos with leaving him behind if anything happens to the spy. So this is almost entirely different from the novels. As I said, the spy wasn't there in the books. This happened after Eros, so they knew exactly what they were looking for, and Miller was with them. So this does seem appropriate for the story that they're doing on the show, except I don't like this dumb dynamic they've created between Amos and Holden, and the fact that he threatened to leave Amos behind, I felt undermined this whole scene. And overall, I just find the conflict between them detracts rather than adds anything to the story, so negative 2. So then we head on over to the stealth ship where everyone except Alex has Alex stays behind to monitor them and as they investigate the stealth ship. Those who have a very keen memory of episode 1 may be able to recognize this as the ship scene and the opening scene of the whole entire show with Julie Mao. I must admit though, my memory was not so good when I first saw this episode, but then they find a suit from the Scopuli, which does make it a bit more clear where they are. In fact, Holden outright says that this is the ship that destroyed the Canterbury. They then split up, which is directly different from the books, as Holden rejects Naomi's request to split up. But then again, this is likely due to the fact that in the novels they already know about the protomolecule, and that they would likely find it on board the ship. They find evidence that someone moved the ship there and invented the ship before escaping. At this point, they can only guess that it was Lionel Polanski, the person they were meant to find, but in the novels they already knew it was Julie Mao. Particularly Miller figured this out as he knew her well. All in all, I think this changes, work. These changes work fine for what they're doing here, so I'll give this a 0. So then we cut back to Earth, where Avasarala, Aaron Wright, and Admiral Souther are talking about their plans to send a warship to attack Fred Johnson and uncover his stealth technology program. Souther expresses doubts about this mission, warning if they don't find anything, it would likely look very bad for them, but Aaron Wright doesn't seem to care. And Avasarala appears to side with Aaron Wright. They then discuss Aaron Wright's plans to kill James Holden on Eros, to which Avasarala does express doubts over, but Aaron Wright again shuts her down. They then all get a message that Avasarala's friend, the Martian ambassador whom she betrayed, killed himself. So as with all Avasarala scenes in Season 1, this didn't happen in the books, but more importantly, Earth never sent a ship after Fred Johnson, and as I explained earlier, they didn't send a team to kill Holden. It was Protogen's men that attacked them in the novels. But it does make a bit of sense to incorporate Earth's involvement in these matters here in the show, where they are more present. Also, there's a lot of subtext to read in this scene, as here is kind of the turning point for Avasarala, as she's beginning to suspect something's not right. She does appear to side with Aaron Wright on attacking Johnson, but I believe she's possibly doing that to keep up appearances, but she makes no secret of doubting Aaron Wright's decision to kill Holden, which she thinks is a mistake. Aaron Wright, for his part, is firmly in the pocket of Protogen, so how he's behaving here makes perfect sense, as he knows full well that Johnson and Holden are not involved in the stealth ships. However, they are trying to uncover the mystery which Protogen wants to keep hidden, so it makes perfect sense that he would go after them. So in a way, in the show, it's also Protogen that's going after Holden. They're simply doing it through Aaron Wright. In the novels, Aaron Wright, of course, wasn't in Book 1, and there's nothing to suggest that Earth was connected with Protogen in Book 1. That was actually more of a Book 2 storyline. However, I do like how this makes Avasarala's storyline more important and sets the stage beautifully for the revelation that Aaron Wright is working with Protogen, so I'll give this a +3. So then we cut over to the Rocinante crew on the stealth ship as they encounter the protomolecule for the first time, but don't recognize what it is until they turn the reactor on and it starts to glow blue and reach for them. So they get successfully freaked out and run off of the ship. Now, in the novels, things go down quite differently. As I mentioned, they were already aware of the protomolecule at this point. But when they go in the engine room, they find a disgusting mess with the protomolecule mixing in with a lot of various body parts of dead bodies of the crew. It describes random intestines, arms, and legs, and other such body parts and organs just blending in one giant disgusting mass covering the engines. So they immediately freak out, but they don't leave the ship. They actually stay on the ship for quite some time. I think even is suggested like a few days, and they study the ship's logs where they find recordings from Protogen and pretty much explains what the protomolecule is and who Protogen are, and this is exposition that the show will hold off from giving its audience until season 2. Miller also watches tapes on Julie Mal and what went down with her. Also in the novels, we get the first mention of Phoebe Station as the recording describes having found the protomolecule on Phoebe, whereas in the show, Phoebe has been mentioned repeatedly at this point and is brought up again here where they find the logs that said that the ship had been to Phoebe before coming here, so it's kind of implying the same thing that's outright said in the books. Both scenes are similar and serve the purpose of the story that they're telling well, but I must say I thought the random body part mass was quite terrifying and raised the stakes in a way that seemed to be much higher in the books, so I'll give this a -1. So they hightail it back to the ship, and the spy reasons that they're going to go to Eros next to look for Lionel Polanski, as all signs seem to indicate that he got off the ship, and Eros would be the logical place to look. He offers to help as he's familiar with Eros. In return, he expects to be set free afterward, and Holden accepts this offer, but Amos does not at all look happy about that decision. Holden then orders the destruction of the stealth ship, but the spy objects, stating that they have control over this ship and that gives them power, and asks why they would give up that power, but Holden states it's a weapon. He doesn't want to fall into anyone's hands, so he destroys it. Now, in the novels, they come to the ship after Eros, so they already knew what happened to Polanski. Also, Holden does order the stealth ship to be destroyed, but in the novels, it's Amos who objects, stating that the ship is worth a small fortune. Holden, of course, thinks he's gone insane and asks if he forgot about the freaking alien substance consuming body parts, but Amos reasons that he can cut it off of the ship and get rid of it. So then Holden reasons with him that they found out there's another ship looking for the stealth ship, which indicates by the logs that he and Miller read, and it's a ship that Alex can't find, meaning it's another badass stealth ship that's looking for them. So then Amos realizes it's not such a great idea after all to salvage the ship. Either way works for me really, so I'll give this a 0. So then we go to Eros where Miller's transport arrives, and just a quick thing that I just noticed when rewatching this episode this time. These two extras seen getting off the transport or played by Daniel Abraham and Ty Frank, who under the pen name James S.A. Corey wrote the Expanse novels and are producers on the show. I didn't realize that they had a cameo, but I recognized them from interviews that I've seen them do, so this is a interesting little Easter egg I thought I'd just point out. Anywho, Miller goes straight to the docks to try to track down what happened to the Anubis shuttle, and when the dock workers is less than cooperative, he ends up beating the crap out of him and looking up the information himself, where he discovers that the shuttle's occupant name was Lionel Polanski. Now, even in the show, I'm not sure why Miller didn't go straight to Sematemba, who was the one who told him about the shuttle from the Anubis arriving on Eros in the first place. But in the novels, as I mentioned before, Miller was not tracking the Anubis. He was tracking Holden directly and was hoping that Holden would lead him to Julie Mal. So in the novels, meeting up with Sematemba was the first thing he did. In fact, Sematemba wasn't even mentioned before this meeting in the novels. As I mentioned before, he played a much smaller role in the novel. So overall, I didn't find this scene all that necessary, so I'll give it a -1. So then Miller gets arrested, and that's where Sematemba finds him, and he bails him out and takes him out for lunch. to get more information from him. There, Simatimba talks about working with him on series and suggests that he got fired for not towing the line and is disappointed to see that the same thing has now happened to Miller. They then talk about Julie, where he advises Miller against trying to find her, as she could be just another gung-ho OPA operative that will just shoot him on sight. Miller refuses to listen, so Simatimba gives him the info that he's looking for, which indicates a tip that she checked into a hotel using the name Lionel Polanski, so Miller runs off to pursue this tip. Now, in the novel, Simatimba simply approaches Miller when he arrives, asking him what he's doing there, and Miller's response is a lot more vague. They don't go into any detail as they do here, and Simatimba knows nothing about Julie Mao and instead simply asks that Miller not make any trouble while he's there, and that's about it. In the novels, Miller is tracking down the Anubis, is not tracking down the Anubis shuttle. He's simply following Holden, so he doesn't require Simatimba's help to do that. Also, Simatimba himself is quite different in the novels, as the name suggests he's more directly of African descent, as I believe it's implied he speaks with an African accent, and he's described as being a much bigger man than Miller, but in the show they're about the same size. Also in the novels, he didn't work with Miller on series. It's said that they coordinated on an investigation that crossed between Sirius and Eros, and that's about it. They were friendly with each other, and he trusted Miller, but they definitely were not the close friends that they are here in the show. It's really hard for me to say which version I like better, as I kind of have issues with both versions. Like, I like that the show expanded Simatimba's role, but there's something that doesn't ring as true, so I'll give this a 0. So then we go back to Tycho Station, where Fred Johnson's techie uses the whole, "oh, you're going to want to take a look at this" cliche. So they say it's sensor data from the battle, and they recorded what the ships are doing, and they seem shocked by this information. The ships that destroyed the Dollinger, that is. So it's not revealed here in this scene, but it's apparent from his face that Fred Johnson knows instantly what this indicates, and that is, as we find out later, that these stealth ships were built by Earth. Now, in the novels, Johnson or his people did not figure this out because the data was a lot more cryptic than that, so they sent it over to Naomi, and she figured out, with Holden and Miller's help, that these ships were built from Earth. And then Holden simply broadcast that information to the solar system at large, which apparently wasn't such a great idea, but I'll cover this more in other videos. Here in the show, however, they have a totally different dynamic with a UN destroyer on its way to attack Tycho Station, and Johnson realizes that is its purpose, so he intends to use this newfound information as a shield, but again, I'll cover this more in other videos. For now, again, it's another situation of either way is fine, so I'll give it a 0. So then we cut over to Eros, with Holden and the Rocinante crew being led by the corporate spy who leads them to the hotel that Lionel Polanski is registered at, but we see at the same time he's calling for a UN TAC team to intercept them. Now, in the novels, Fred Johnson's information is what led them to the hotel. They were aware at this stage that they were being followed by Miller, but didn't consider him a threat, but were kind of keeping an eye on him. And as I mentioned in previous videos, in the novels, the spy didn't exist, and it was just explained in a line of dialogue later on that there was a spy on Tycho Station that leaked the information on where to find Holden, and so Protogen hastily put together a team at the hotel to intercept them. This way, I have to say, is actually a bit more intense, because here the audience is clued into the fact that Holden and the others are walking into a trap, which does up the tension level, so I'll give this a +1. So then they go inside the hotel lobby, where Holden goes to the counter and asks about Lionel Polanski and patiently waits while he gets information from the clerk. Now, this scene was amazing for all the subtext. As Holden talks to the hotel clerk, he's completely oblivious to what's going on around him, as Amos very clearly is staking out the situation, as there are several people moving around in the background. And every moment every movement is significant, as there is a man like kind of flirting with a woman. On the couches, there are two girls getting like a can of something from a vending machine, and then there's two big men who walk in. They just seem to be minding their own business, and Alex is also oblivious as he just takes a seat on the couch. But Amos, I think, can tell something is up, and his biggest indicator of this is how nervous the corporate spy is acting, because the corporate spy knows these background people are in fact the tag team, and so he kind of tips this off to Amos through his behavior. This was such a brilliant scene because there's so much subtext. And so as Naomi and Holden talk about how best to approach Lionel Polanski, Amos very slowly and casually starts to unzip his jumpsuit to get to his weapon. The spy sees this and makes a run for it, and that's when Amos starts shooting at him. He misses, and so that's when the tag team break out and start firing. Amos takes down two of them before he and his whole group are pinned down, and things don't look good for them as they're running out of ammo. But then Miller shows up out of nowhere and catches the thugs off guard, kills one of them, and disorientates the other long enough for Amos to kill him. Now, this scene was also great in the novels, but it played out quite differently. In the novels, a woman stepped directly in their path, held a gun up to Alex's head, and ordered them to come with her. Amos didn't take too kindly to this, and having his weapon at the ready, just shot at her, which caused a hidden tag team to come out of nowhere and start shooting at them. The woman got killed in the crossfire, but Amos and the others were pinned down much in the same way as they are here in the show, and Miller showed up to save them much in the same way. The major difference with Miller, though, is he was following Holden in the novel, so he knew to intervene. Whereas in the show, he just so happened to show up at the right time and just so happened to know which side to attack, which I'm not sure how he would know that in the show. So although I do like that part better in the novels, overall I think this scene is much improved by getting to see it play out in the visual medium. You get a lot of subtle nuance that doesn't come out quite the same in the novels, and plus the way the scene was constructed to slowly build tension was absolutely brilliant filmmaking. So I'm going to give this a +4. So then Holden and his group meet up with Miller, who calls Simatima to warn him about the shots fired, and then he proceeds to make his way to Lionel Polanski's room. Holden stops him to yell at him, demanding to know who he is, but Miller just tells him not to touch him again or he'll kill him. So then Holden and the others follow him up to the room. Now in the novels, Miller talks to Simatima when he calls, and he tells him that Simatima informs Miller that they received no notice of any firefight, which Miller finds extremely odd, as all sorts of alarms should have went off. So Miller tells Simatima to come and investigate, which he does, and Miller briefly explains the situation to him, and then he and Holden and the others go up to the room while Simatima holds down the fort in the lobby. Not that this really makes any big of a difference, so I'll give this a 0. So Miller, Holden, and the others make their way up to the room, burst in to find all the power is turned off in the room and it smells awful, and they discover Julie Mao's dead body covered in the proto-molecule. Now, this is pretty much exactly the same way as what happened in the novel, so I won't have much to say about the differences between them discovering Julie until the next episode, so I'll give this a 0. So my final adaptation score for Salvage is a +3. A pretty close call. You might have noticed me giving a lot of zeros in this video. This was a great episode, but it was adapted from a great part of the novel, so both parts were really great. So mostly it was a lot harder with this episode trying to decide which medium was better, because they're both great. I continue to not like the adversarial way Holden and Amos' relationship is depicted in the show, but the clear difference in this episode was the shootout scene at the hotel, which was amazingly put together in the show and far more intense, which did give the show the slight edge. But overall, great episode adapted from a great part of the novel. So that's it for my book to show comparison for The Expanse Season 1 Episode 8. I will be back to finish off my book to show coverage for Season 1 in the next couple of weeks, so be sure to keep an eye out for that. Also be sure to check out my channel as I do many more videos on shows like Game of Thrones, Star Trek, Babylon 5, and more, so be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.